Hi, this is PD at BurgZerg Arcade at BurgZergArcade.com, and this is tutorial 189. Now today we're going to be dealing with our mesh offset. So let's go ahead and open up Unity. And I'll go ahead and open up MonoDevelop, make sure I have my mesh offset class already loaded. And I'm going to come back and we're going to go down to the last hair, which is for me 12_5. And I'm just going to load that up real quick. And as you can see, it's just not positioned right. So how are we going to fix this? Well, we have our mesh offset class. So the first thing I want to do is attach that to our prefab. So there's our prefab. I have to go into scripts and find it. It's probably under utility. Yes, it is. I'm just going to take it, and I missed, and just drop it on. So here we go. So we have the positional offset, the rotational offset, and the scale. And I guess I should change this name because I've used the full name for the others, so I'm going to quickly go do that now just to keep it a little more consistent. Now, let's see. Now that does screw up one of our other, that was our equipment room, which is fine. We'll just change this. I believe we call it position offset. We'll just come back in. Now we're getting all sorts of errors. And we'll just have to change all of them. Which is fine because I'd rather keep my names a little more consistent. And we got one more. Right here. There we go. That took care of all of them. I'm going to shrink scripts down again. Although actually I'm going to need it again, so let's just leave it open because we'll have to add this to more than one hair. But I've got it added here. Positional offset. Great. Let's start with that. I'll start it back up. We'll go to that one hair and we'll start taking a look here. As you notice up here in our position for our inspector, it's 0, 0, 0. Let's go ahead and figure out what it really needs to be. So we'll just come in and, well, I'm always going to have to move it on the Z. So let me select this, the actual hair. Having trouble clicking just the hair. Fine, I'll just go through the hair mount. And it's because I was on the little hand here. You don't get to click on anything with the hand, where if you didn't have the hand on any of these other three, you can actually click it. So that was my mistake. Alright, so let's move it on the Z. Actually, in this case, it's positioned differently. If you notice, the Z is pointing up and the Y is pointing in the old Z direction. So we have a 90-degree rotation on our X. So I'm actually going to zero that out. It's pretty close to 0 anyway, just to get everything easier to work with. So I'm going to start with which is the Y. And I'm going to try to keep these other variables at 0 for now. And just take a look here. Okay, that does seem to be in close enough, but it is off on the X. So I'll move a little on the X. Not quite enough. Well, let's do a little bit more. And that seems to be pretty centered. Let's move it back a bit more. Not quite that much. About there. Let me just look off of here. That looks pretty centered as far as the X and the Y goes. I think I'm going to move it just a little on the Z, just to get the stuff up top hidden. And I'm going to move it a little bit more on the X, because if you notice the hair around the ear here versus the hair around the ear here, and since I like dealing with smaller numbers, I'm actually going to crop some of these off. So let's go to 3 decimal places, 1, 2, 3, and in this case we don't need to, and 1, 2, 3. And we'll want to go up just a little bit more on the X. So let's say 7. I'm just actually going to swing to the side here. Not quite enough, so 8, 9, 2. So 2 looks good here. Not quite as good as it looks there though. I'm just going to jump a bit and say 2, 5, 3. 3 looks good. And they're not quite even yet. But I'm going to stick with that and save the time of me fussing around with it. There's going to have to be a lot more little fine-tuning adjustments, but this should be enough to give you a quick idea of how it's going to be done. Actually, I do want to fix these eyebrows enough. So again, crop them off to the 3rd decimal place. At least that's what I'm going to be using. You don't have to. We'll round that one off, and I'm going to write these values down. So 0.03, 0.053, and these are actually all negative. So let's make sure we get that into. And negative 0.044. Now I'm actually going to make the manual adjustments right here as well, but I'm pretty sure they might not save. And if they don't save, that's fine. I've got them written down. So it was negative 0.05, negative 0.053, and negative 0.044. It looks like I wrote. All right. Let me just check that last value one more time. Yes. And check it here. And of course I put them in the wrong spot. I want them down here. So negative 0.05, not 1.05, negative 0.05, negative 0.053, and negative 0.044. Now you can leave these values up here. It really doesn't matter because we actually are zeroing those out at the beginning. But I'm just going to zero them out anyway. So that looks good. I'm going to stop it and save, and it actually does look like it's saved here. So that's great. I won't have to write all these values down. But let's go ahead and add this ability to use these values in our loading of the hair. So we'll come back to the hair mesh. Okay, I see these are just other scripts I loaded up. That's fine. We'll go back to the hair mesh, and right here, loading hair mesh. So after everything is done, I'm going to check to see if I actually have this script attached to it, which is called mesh offset. And if I do, we use the values. Now we've done this before, but we'll just quickly do it again. So if, what do I call it, hairstyle dot get component. The component we want is mesh offset. Does not equal null. And we should probably actually cache this. So let's just say, yeah, we'll just call it mesh offset. Actually, we'll just call it mo. And we'll put this in right to here. Then down here we'll just say if mo does not equal null. And of course you could just say if mo does equal null, return. Either one works. But if it does not equal null, I like the other way actually. If it does equal null, return, which means it won't run anything else in the rest of this function. So if it does not equal null, that means we do have it. So I'm going to say hairstyle dot transform dot local position is equal to, it would be mo dot and I forget what I called it. I think it was positional offset, yes. And we'll just stop that and let's start it back up. Now, since these values are always supposed to be 0, we're going to run into some problems with some rotation and scale, but let's just take care of the offset for now. So let's go back, and it's completely not right. So let's see what went wrong. I'm actually going to scroll down a bit just so I can see exactly what's happening here. Okay, well, let's take a look at the hair. So I'll shrink this down. We'll grab the hair mount, which is right here. And it did add the positions that we wanted. The rotation's different. And that's what's going to be next, I guess. I'm not sure why the rotation's different. Let me correct that. I think I went and zeroed out my original hair positions, and I wasn't supposed to. So it's supposed to be 270 right here. I'm not sure why it's 3. I probably set it to 360. But I'm just going to save that off and try it again, see if this works. And when we go back, there we go. Now that's part of the problem we're going to run into in a minute, but if we take a look, it's still not quite right. And, well, I'm going to do the adjustments off screen. As you see, it's going to take some tinkering to get everything positioned exactly the way you want it. But I'll do all those adjustments off screen. And of course, you know, as we've seen, we'll just add them down here. So let's stop that off and let's start adding the rotation and the scale. Now the rotation actually needs a quaternion, and when I first set this up, I set it up to take a quaternion. And if we quickly look in Unity, and we select the hair, let's close down position because we have that done. You have an X, Y, and a W value, and if you're not familiar with quaternion math, it can be a little confusing, so let's actually switch this over to a vector 3, and it'll make it a little bit easier. So let's come down here, and I'm going to do the rotation next. So hairstyle, dot transform, dot local rotation, and we're going to make it equal to a quaternion dot, I used to use Euler angles. It looks like it's been made obsolete. Returns a quaternion, it takes in a vector 3 and an Euler. It looks like they just replaced it with just Euler now instead of Euler angles. That seems to be the same, so we're just going to take this one. And inside here is where we're going to pass in our mode dot, I believe I called it rotational offset, or rotation offset. And while I'm here, I might as well do scale. Well, we'll wait for scale because I want to play around with that a bit as well. So I'll start this up, and here we are. Now we just have X, Y, and Z. And if we start this up, and we go to that hairstyle, here it is here, but let's say I wanted to rotate it. Now this one doesn't actually need to be rotated, but let's say it did. And I wanted to rotate it, I don't know, let's say it was like this much by this much. So let's go ahead and change these values. Let's just say it's 333. We'll just say 0 on this one by 33.5. So 333, 0, 33.5. I'll save that off and stop it. And when I start it back up and go back, it should be, should have been the same spot. Did I not save it? Or did I put it in the wrong spot? I'm not sure what I did. I probably actually still had the hair selected instead of the prefab. So it's 333 and 33.5. And let's start this up. And when we look at it, it's not quite what we had, was it? Well, let's find out. We'll select the hair. 333, 33.5. And these values are the same. So yeah, that's right. Next will be the scale. Now we already have a base scale that we're using here. If you were to go ahead and look, it starts off at 1, but when you start it up, you'll notice that it's completely different. And that has to do with the scale that it's getting from its parent. And of course, that's affected by its parent and so on, all the way up the ladder. So the scale gets adjusted there. And this should be a 1. So we have to figure out some way to actually have the hair scale better. And actually, I think I'm going to leave that for another tutorial because it's something I'm going to want to work with. It might simply be a multiplication, or I'm pretty sure we're not just going to be able to add a value. But let's stop that off. I'm going to reset these to 0. And I'll do one quick test. Let's say mono develop. I'm going to come in and do hairstyle dot transform dot local scale is equal to mo dot scale offset. And I'll stop that, or sorry, save it, and I'm going to close the rotation, and I'm just going to set it to 1. And let's see how that looks. It's probably going to be way too small. And it did switch. And let's go ahead and select it. Hair mount. Wait for the yellow box to disappear. And as you see, the scale is 1, but we don't really want that. What we wanted was, I believe it was 4.2 or 4.19, something like that. So let's change this. Let's just do 4.2. And when we change back, there we go. I am going to want to play around with this a bit because I don't want to have to hard cast it, because what if you shrink your model down? So we'll start it up. Let's make them really fat and short. And I can't see them now, but let's switch that hairstyle. And if we were to move down, it actually still fits, so actually that might work. But there are other ways to do it, and I'm actually going to take a look at those other ways. If I were to scale them back up to about there, and I can't actually grab this slider as it went off the screen. But like I said, there are other ways to do it, and I do want to look at it, but for now that does seem to be working. So that should be it for our mesh offset class. I'm probably going to have to go through and tinker with each of these, so it's going to take me quite a while to do all these, and probably take you a little bit of while as well. So anyway, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye.